Hola, hola, bem-vindo. Hello and welcome, everybody. Let me just get my slides up and then we can begin. Bear with me. Thank you, Paulina, and Two Sides for this very kind invitation. My name is Ian Bates. I'm the founder of Blue, which is a strategic advisory consultancy to the fiber packaging world. We work across all regenerative packaging verticals, including cartons, containerboard, corrugated packaging, flexibles, molded fiber, etc. We work with many great partners, and our business ethos is all about open trust and collaboration. Um, I'm going to spend the next 25 minutes and I'll attempt to shine some light and hopefully some sunshine and provide a realistic forecast of what might happen in the fiber packaging sector over the next few years. So, where to start? It has been a very challenging few years, particularly since COVID, that's for sure. And we have, let's be clear, huge social and economic turmoil on a global scale, significant changes in legislation, and not least the climate crisis, which every single one of us faces every day. It's a daunting but exciting time to be alive, that's for sure. So buckle up, join me on this exciting journey. But first, let me just tell you a little bit about my background and how I fell in love with um, paper. That's me as a 10-year-old chap. And I had a paper round. I was a paper boy delivering newspapers and magazines to my neighborhood. And after a few weeks, I realized that people were putting the papers by their front door and in their porchway. And I asked permission if I could collect them on my go-kart. And then once a fortnight, we would load up the newspapers into my mum's and my mother's green minivan, which is a small car which can hold about a pallet's worth of paper and magazines. And we took it up to the local paper mill about 10 miles from where I lived and turned it into cash. And back then, one carload, about a pallet, was about £12, or should we say €15 or $15. Today, that same amount of money is worth about £130. And I, at that point, realized that what I was earning doing my paper round was a lot less, considerably less than what I could earn from collecting used papers and magazines. And let's be clear, human beings, we are the only ones that produce waste. We are addicted to extraction, and this needs to change. Nature, on the other hand, does not send things to landfill, does not incinerate, and does not pollute. There is no such thing as waste in nature. It just shares the vital ingredients with one organism and another. We have an awful lot to learn from nature, that's for sure. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by sharing some consumer perceptions. This is data from Two Sides' latest 2025 trend tracker, which is consumer research done on a global scale, interviewing over 10,000 people. And it's quite alarming that even though I'm sure working in the industry, we know that forests are growing, at least sustainable forests are, only 16% of the public, these are European figures, by the way, so they will vary slightly depending on where you are on the planet. Only 16% of people believe that forests are growing. So 84%, the balance, either don't know or they think that forests are shrinking. So, which is very concerning to say the least. 25% think that paper recycling is more than 60%. When in fact, as we know, it's in Brazil, 85%, and in Europe, an average of about 83%. It is the most, oops, sorry, it is the most recycled packaging commodity compared to all the others that are available, which is a fantastic story. Another fact, 35% of people believe that paper harms the environment, which is rather disturbing. And 56% believe digital communications are better for the environment than paper. 76% want the choice of printed bills and statements. And the reason why consumers are confused, we think, i.e., that forests are shrinking, is because we are being bombarded daily by banks and energy companies and other organizations with statements like save paper, save a tree, go digital, save the planet, which is all complete nonsense and is now illegal under the Green Claims Code, which is coming into legal effect. And it's quite frankly, we need to, stop that sort of nonsense. And the work that Two Sides does to combat greenwashing is absolutely vital. A personal story, I was buying some tools from a DIY store recently, and the gentleman presented me with a large printed receipt. It's about the size of an A4 sheet. And he said to me, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've just destroyed part of a forest giving you that receipt." And I said, "Oh, really? Why'd you say that? Couldn't we actually say that by using more paper, we're actually encouraging farmers to grow more trees in the same way that when you drink beer, when you're enjoying your pint this evening, you will be encouraging farmers to grow more barley?" And he looked at me quizzically and said, "I've never thought of it like that. Thank you very much." So stories like that and a bit of education can go an awful long way. Good news is printed books are on the rise, and 58% of people believe that reading printed media is far more engaging, and we learn a lot more from printed media. And it's interesting to note that in countries in Scandinavia, that they're starting to bring back printed textbooks to replace learning on screens because it works better. Children learn better from printed media, which is very encouraging to hear. And interesting fact, 58% of us now ignore digital marketing. And with increasing laws around GDPR and other um, controls over how our data is being used, and with all of the data hacks and worries that have been happening with our data being stolen, it is really important that we do not ignore the value of printed media. Anyway, this presentation is about packaging. Good news is 53% of people believe that paper packaging is better for the environment, which is great to hear. 41% will avoid a retailer if they are not actively reducing non-recyclable packaging. And 62% prefer online products to be delivered in paper packaging. And last stat, 39% of people believe that it is the government's responsibility to reduce non-recyclable packaging. So there we are. I think the point is that we need to keep delivering factual information to people that is clear, easy to understand, and relevant, and particularly for children, so that they can understand that we're not destroying forests, and explaining it in inspiring and simple ways, I think is really important. So one of the things that I do in my work is I work with a super organization that you might have heard of called MG. They provide data and forecasts for the paper packaging and tissue sectors. They've just produced two reports, which you can see on the screen. One is a World Carton Board Market Outlook until 2030, and the other one is a Containerboard Outlook to 2030. And I'm going to share some of the findings from these reports, which I hope you will find interesting. And then I will go on to share some of the key trends that are taking place, which, again, I think will bring some good news to you. That's what we want. We want some good news. We need some good news in these times of global tension, etc. So I'm going to break it down into these areas: demand, trade, and just bear with me one moment while I flick my slide on. I'm going to focus on key trends which might happen over the next 5 years, and so that we're as informed as possible. And it's never been a more important time to be furnished with the facts and to really understand where the opportunities are, where the threats are as well, but also where the opportunities are. And hopefully what I'm going to present to you will provide you with some good guidance. So on demand, a general overview. In 2023, we saw a fall in demand post-COVID. There was a huge spike in demand for paper products, particularly driven predominantly by home-delivered e-commerce packaging. So the corrugated sector had a huge increase in demand, as did the carton board and paper sectors. We're seeing moderate growth through to 2030. If you want the exact figures by country, by region, then obviously MG can help you with that information, and you can obtain a copy of the reports via their website. 2025 has been an anemic, slow start, not surprising when you think of all the political turmoil and the trade barriers, trade tariffs, and all the other uncertainty that every business that I speak to is trying to manage at the moment, and is making investment planning, forecasting extremely challenging. But we are seeing the drive of online shopping, which I'll go into in a bit more detail in a minute. The plastic substitution or single-use plastic substitution with fiber and general innovation is driving growth, which is really encouraging to see. In terms of trade, the dominant exporting regions for carton board are Western Europe and China. This pattern will persist through to 2030. Supply and demand balance, really important. All regions are currently oversupplied. North America has the strongest supply-demand balance. New capacity is focused in China, the United States of America, and Western Europe, hopefully preventing these regions from being oversupplied. But it is a very delicate balance, as I'm sure anybody working in a mill right now will understand. In terms of regional insights, Asia Pacific is by far the largest market for carton board, driven by consumer product manufacturing, so that won't surprise you. But Japan being an exception. Japan is having a really tough time economically right now. And technological innovations driving demand for lightweight, high performance paper-based materials, and increasing use of recycled fiber and also alternative fibers as well. And we're seeing huge developments in the world of print, particularly digital, and high-speed finishing, and sort of design innovation, which brands are increasingly requiring to tell their stories in a engaging and inventive way. In terms of sustainability, now, this is still very much high on the agenda, but when you have a global economy that's facing the challenges that we're currently facing, sustainability has slipped down the agenda. There's no doubt about that. It is not number one, it's probably number 3 or number 4 now, but price and supply are probably 1 and 2. But the demand for widely recycled packaging is right at the top of the agenda for both brand owners and retailers. Energy efficient manufacturing processes, so finding ways of making things using renewable, regenerative energy, using as little carbon as possible, is going to be absolutely key. And of course, the legal landscape is changing at a vast pace, particularly in Europe. There are all sorts of changes due to the extended producer responsibility, the packaging waste regulations, the European deforestation regulations, and now the Green Claims Code. Now, all of these things are complex, they need to be understood, and retailers and brands and converters, printers, mills are getting their head around these things, but there's still an awful lot of, should we say, grey areas as to what these rules and regulations will mean to business day to day. But decarbonisation, very much going to be a key thing going forward because of climate change and because of the net zero targets being set by countries. We are seeing, the objective of getting to net zero by 2050. That's a tall ask, but well, we'll see whether it can be achieved or not. But certainly, that is the direction of travel, and the move and the transition to renewable energy away from fossil-based sources. I mentioned regulatory pressures. These are only going to increase. And of course, competitiveness. We have seen huge amounts of changes in the ownership of companies with mergers and acquisitions, which I'll come on to on my next slide. So bear with. Yeah, I mean, the strategic partnerships that we're seeing with the Smurfit's acquisition of WestRock in 2024, that's ended up with a deal worth $11 billion. International Paper's acquisition of DS Smith Packaging, $7.2 billion merger, which happened earlier this year. And then Mondi's acquisition of Schumacher Packaging in late 2024-25. That was a $634 million acquisition. So this is a huge change in the landscape in terms of who's producing and who's supplying. And at the same time, we've got changes in consumer behavior. Consumers want to see right-sized. That could mean less packaging, optimized packaging. They don't want to be receiving a small package from Amazon in a massive, great big parcel, a big box, or whatever it may be. That's just not going to be possible in the future. And brands are demanding increasing transparency and sustainability strategies which are aligned with their brand values and their own strategy. So really important, and that's not going to go away. That's for sure. So on to some examples. I start with the biggest one really. This is a $6.5 trillion market, which is growing on average at somewhere between 8 and 9%. And in just recent times, we've seen the transition away from plastics to fiber, particularly by Amazon, but many other e-com retailers are following the same path. Amazon's growth, just to give you some idea, in 2020, 38% growth, 21, 23% growth, 22, 9%, 23, 12%, and 24, 11%. These are big numbers, huge growth. So, the fact that fiber is benefiting from this is a really exciting and important development. And then Marks and Spencer's moving to reusable carrier bags, and other retailers are following suit. These bags can be used up to 50 times. Big business and an important change. I'm just conscious of time, and I'm going to move on reasonably quickly. Multi-packs, both in soft drinks and beer, we've seen a transition away from plastic to fiber, providing added value in terms of branding, single-handed carrying features, and in some cases for the carton board packs, fridge dispensing features. This is all about adding value, and the transition and automation from plastic to fiber has been absolutely extraordinary and very fast as well. I mean, the changes that I see in the UK retailers is you hardly see any plastic now, which is great to see. The other sector that's seeing some interesting developments is the detergent market. So these are detergent capsules, used to be packed in flexible pouches, and now packed in corrugated or carton board packs, which are child safe. They've got click close features, really cleverly designed, made out of fiber with a barrier coating on the inside, some very clever technology. And they're easier to merchandise, they're easier to distribute, and they're easier to store at home. So all very important. And that's been a monumental success. And most of the leading brands, Unilever and P&G, have moved that way. So that's a great sign to see. And a market that's growing. So that's great. This is good. I was at an awards evening night before last, and Starbucks has announced they're launching their plastic-free paper cup with fiber lids. This is a huge market. 250 million, 250 billion paper cups are used. The majority of them are plastic lined. That is going to change. The plastic lids will move away from plastic to fiber. You can bet your bottom dollar. And this transition is happening not just in drinks cups, but across the whole food service chain. And we'll hear later from the gentleman from McDonald's that this is a really important part of their core strategy in driving out non-renewable, difficult to recycle packaging products. Another sector, these little disposable coffee capsules. In France, Nestle, with its Nespresso brand, has now moved away from aluminium to fiber. This is a huge growth area. This market's growing at 6 to 8% annually. It's worth $40 billion. Aluminium represents about 60%, plastic about 30%, and at the moment, fiber only has about 10%. Well, I'm sure that is only going to grow. So another very exciting area of development, particularly area of development to watch, particularly for molded fiber innovation. And then this sector, very interesting for merchandising liquids. We'll hear from Pernod Ricard Absolute later, but this transition or development of fiber-based bottles, yes, they've got plastic liners in them and maybe closures, but in the fullness of time, they will be innovated out and we will see 100% natural solutions. It's a small market at the moment, but boy, has it got potential. Very exciting to watch. Then we have brands like the Nestle Smarties brand. This is $1 billion plus brand. They've currently using about 250 million packs a year. That has now all moved away from single-use plastic to fiber. And there are other brands that we're seeing like Tony Chocolonely, Mars, and many other confectionery brands that have followed this, I would say, market-leading behavior. So really exciting to see. The other big sector that we see moving from plastic to fiber is produce packaging for fruit and vegetables. This is very evident now in Europe, particularly in France and now in the UK. It's an automation headache. Moving from a plastic tray or a plastic punnet into a cardboard tray requires investment and it's complex. But we are now starting to see this whole market shifting, which is great, and it's a market that's growing at 5% annually. So good news for fiber. And then we have protein products, so meat and fish and ready meals. We're now starting to see plastic trays being replaced by cardboard trays. Now, yes, there may be some plastic in there, but in the future, that plastic will disappear and will be replaced with celluloid alternatives. And I know that those developments are well advanced and being same sort of format, but for ready meals that have got to go into ovens and microwaves and so forth. We will see those developments over the next few years, and it's very exciting to see. And then my last example of transition, if you like, is tea bags. This is a big market. I mean, I know you don't drink much tea in Brazil. I think it's about 5 million tea bags are consumed in Brazil a year, but in the UK, 96 million, would you believe? We're tea fanatics. 145 billion tea bags are consumed every year. About half of them are paper at the moment. A third of them are plastic and the rest are in other materials. But why are they in plastic? They shouldn't be in plastic. They should all be in a natural material. Or we move away from tea bags and just use loose leaf tea. That might be a better way of doing it. But, that's just a personal view. And then, so just to sort of sum up, the past year in paper packaging has been defined by accelerated plastic substitution, regulatory legal pressure from EPR schemes, etc., and bold innovation in barrier coatings, natural and dispersion barrier coatings, and molded fiber innovation to meet both environmental goals and evolving consumer expectations. And the future, well, the future of paper packaging looks increasingly circular and data-driven, very much design-led, with rapid advances in fiber technology, recyclability standards, and AI-enhanced production, unlocking new value across both consumer and industrial markets. So, we are running out of time, but it's not too late to make the right choices. And it is important as consumers, all of us, the consumers, that we do make the right choices. I wish everybody luck, good health, and prosperity. Thank you for listening. Obrigado por ouvir.